Jay is one of the longest-serving controllers in UK television after taking up her role in 2011, and that stability appears to be delivering results. Ratings growth, record revenues, and countless awards. It's not too generous to say that it is boom time for Channel 4 at the moment. And all of this when the spectre of privatisation continues to glower menacingly from Whitehall. I'll do my best to hold Jay's feet to the fire on the big issues over the next hour, and I won't be alone. New to Edinburgh this year, as I'm sure some of you have seen, is our wall of video questions. So the great and the good of TV will also be chipping in with their own spirited queries throughout the session. No programming pitches though, I promise, Jay. Also, just to note, if you want to ask your own questions, please submit them through the app, and I'll do my best to ask the best ones of Jay. There is no roving mic at the end. I repeat, no roving mic. So welcome, Jay. Does it feel like the realisation of your vision for Channel 4 since you started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a bit of a mountain that we've climbed. I mean, it's been 5 years, and I know there have been people in this room who've attended this event in previous years when it's been really hard. So I look at that, and yeah, I feel incredibly proud. I think what you see there, and it's very striking from those last few seconds, is just this steady stream of returning hits on the main channel. And you know, for hours and days I was asked, how are we going to solve Big Brother? Well, that's the answer. We have a returning spine of shows on the main channel that are doing real volume. We have E4 up, another record-breaking year, and we have the portfolio on par with last year, despite the Olympics, despite the Euros, which I think just gives you a sense of the strength of where we are now relative to where we were 5 years ago.
You mentioned the tough period. I remember being here in 2013, and I don't think it's unfair to say that you were sort of a bit under siege. There was huge industry unrest with your creative processes. Some of your shows weren't quite hitting the mark, and Channel 5 was gloating about beating you in the ratings. What's changed? How have you turned it around? Well,
it always makes me laugh when people say that, because to a certain extent that was the beginning of the turnaround. If you remember, and I remember very clearly, that was the year when Southcliffe appeared at 9 o'clock, the Mills started working, and ironically, just as I came to Edinburgh, we began to see the signs of progress. By the end of that year, we were dominating the Guardian list of the best shows on TV that year. Then we started mopping up at the awards. So, I mean, realistically, I walked through the door in 2011. We had no real pipeline. We'd lost 200 hours of commercial programming, and it was a total rebuild. And
Big Brother you're referring to.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly, and it's taken 5 years to get there, but I think now when I look at that, and you can see in the show reel, there is real solidity in that schedule, and that's taken time to build. But inevitably, I mean, it's like lots of processes, isn't it? You're going to go slightly backwards before you move forwards, but I'm really happy with where we are now.
You mentioned a couple of dramas. Is there anything that you'd pinpoint particularly? I know a lot of people would probably think of Gogglebox as an obvious example.
I don't think it's one show. I mean, I do think, and this is going to sound slightly pretentious in California, but I think it's more a state of mind. I mean, Gogglebox was about backing a show that hadn't worked. First Dates was about backing a show that hadn't worked. You know, a lot of the shows that have transformed Channel 4's fortunes have come from a different approach to risk-taking and a different approach to what failure looks like. You know, let's go through the rubble, let's see what's good in that show, let's stick with it and grow it until it becomes a hit. So I think it's more a change in attitude and process than one single show that changed our fortunes.
I definitely want to talk more about that sticking with things later. But do you think that just your being there for a good amount of time, that stability has helped as well?
Yeah, I mean, I know it always makes me laugh when there's sort of change at my level in the industry, that indies come in looking absolutely crestfallen, and actually it's not because they're sad they've lost a friend, it's they're sad they've lost a relationship, and this person's going to have to be reinvented in another world. So I certainly think it's true that having consistent messaging from a channel helps. I mean, to be honest, you saw it on BBC Two when Janice was there for a long time. It definitely helps that you've got a clarity of vision. It helps that I've got a team who've also been in place for a very long time now, so you know who you're dealing with it for. And, you know, I've made mistakes, we've all made mistakes, we've learned from them and we've moved on and we now know what we're doing. And I think there's just a clarity of proposition at 4, which is harder to see on other channels because there's been more movement, but it's certainly given us an edge, I think.
Have you still got the appetite?
I mean,
still got the fire in the belly?
I think people think I make this up. I mean, it is the most extraordinary channel. I can't begin to describe to you what it's like. You know, all of you know, in the end, you're in telly because you want to make great shows, you want to take risks, you want to back kind of mad ideas. My job is to sit there and listen to people with mad ideas and go, yeah, maybe we'll do that then. Day in, day out, on a channel that is tasked with doing that by government. I mean, that is an extraordinary privilege.
Danny Cohen said a couple of years ago that the shelf life of control was about 2 or 3 years. You clearly, or you demonstrably disagree with him.
Do I demonstrate? Well, I mean, not necessarily. I think you should stay in these jobs for as long as you've got something to give and for as long as you're on top form. I think the channel's in a good place now. We've got real momentum there. There's still more to do. There's always more to do. And curiously on 4, there's more to do than in my experience, having done 1 and 5, there is on another channel because we don't have those great blocks of soaps in quite the same way. So creative renewal is not a phase we went through and now we've grown up. We have to creatively renew the entire time. So there's an energy there that I think having ongoing focus on, if for as long as I've got the appetite to do that, I'll keep doing it.
Do you think the work that you're doing at Channel 4 and the public service purposes that you're fulfilling is as equal to your time at the BBC, or perhaps even more so because you're right at the top of it and leading it?
I think the thing about Channel 4, and it just bears saying again and again, because people, astonishingly, lots of people in telly still don't remember this, we get no public money. So what we are trying to do is uniquely difficult. I honestly believe that, having done the job at 1 as well. We are trying to deliver real public value and to pay our own way. And that is an amazing thing to try and pull off week in, week out. You know, to knowingly get up in the morning and look the sales director in the eye and say, I'm commissioning an international current affairs show, knowing it will struggle to get an audience, and knowing that that's what I'm there to do, and knowing that we're going to schedule it at 9 o'clock. I can see you, Mr. Humphreys, if you think I can't see you in the front row. Heroes of Helmond. Scheduled at 9 o'clock this week, exactly that sort of show. Amazing piece of work, very proud to have it on the channel. Did I think it would do 3 million? No, I did not. Now, I think that's why Channel 4 is important, that we keep making those decisions.
Okay, we've got our first question from the wall.
Looking at your schedule now, what other programmes do you think are channel defining and transformational?
I think any number of them are. I mean, I suppose one of the genres that I think is people can be very snooty about that I'm really proud of is what we've done in factual entertainment, whether it's The Island or Hunted or Eden, those great big set pieces at 9 o'clock that, you know, because I've talked a lot about this, come from an insight about the way in which the world is changing and come from an appetite to talk particularly to young audiences about big important themes, about digital security and safety, about, you know, how could society be reconfigured to start again, about what it's like to be a man in modern Britain. So I think some of those big factual entertainment shows are channel defining. I mean, obviously, drama massively important for us, comedy massively important for us, but for a predominantly factual channel, I think the fact that we have now got shows in that genre that I think could only be on Channel 4 has been a really important part of that story.
And do you think that what you touched on earlier in terms of sticking by shows has paid dividends with some of those brands that you're talking about?
Yeah, but as I say, I do think, and I've talked about this in my RTS piece, it's about being wasteful of our own IP. I mean, you all know you're a room full of producers and people who make stuff. It takes a long time to come up with a good idea. And, you know, sometimes a good idea turns out to be a rubbish idea, and sometimes it's a rubbish idea I've made and put on the telly and nobody's watched. But sometimes a good idea is a good idea that we didn't land very successfully the first time. And First Dates is a classic example of that, but there are quite a lot of others now. I mean, 24 Hours in Custody would be another one. Didn't do well enough first time round. Probably if you're using the great laws of ratings, you'd say that doesn't come back. I think it's one of the most extraordinary shows on TV now. It shows a glimpse of aspects of British life that you don't see anywhere else. So I think, I mean, it's that strange phrase, wasn't it, that Reed Hastings used about Ted Sarandos, that he had a golden gut, which sounds like a sort of creative IBS or something. But I mean, I don't think I've got that, but I think we need to be brave enough to say I can see something in this and I'm going to persist. And, you know, I think the strategy has paid off.
And data's helping you with that, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I think, you know, and I think we end up having a quite moribund conversation about what success looks like on telly in Britain, and it is a bit depressing. It's did that beat that or did that beat that? I mean, you know this, for a commercial broadcaster, you're being assessed in lots of different ways as it cut through with young audiences. I look at audience appreciation scores. I look at, was something big on Twitter? Was it viral? Are people talking about it? What are the germs of a hit show that may not be immediately apparent, but give you the faith to go again with something? And, you know, it won't always work, but I think we've had a lot of success following that pattern.
Isn't First Dates an example of where you've looked at the information that you're getting from your registered users and you've found that they you know, that they enjoy the show and
no, not. I mean, I know people keep
recommissioning?
wanting me to say that, but it's not actually true. You know, it's fantastic. The data strategy has been transformational for Channel 4 because it has increased our capacity to bring money through the door, simply put. But no, we don't use the data in quite that way. I mean, I think, I'm sure he's here somewhere, Simon Dixon was very important in getting First Dates to the stage that it's at now. But no, it was much simpler than that. It was sitting there thinking there's something in that. You know, it didn't quite land at 9 o'clock. It was too complicated. Everyone could phone in to date people. That wasn't quite right. But there was something heartwarming and redemptive about it. And how could we get it to the next level? And, you know, Fred joining it, the rest of the cast joining it, all of these little things have finessed a show which was already a good idea and grown it into an international hit for 2020.
So no commissioning by algorithm.
Well, no, I mean, I don't believe in that. I mean, I think I love data. I think it's incredibly helpful. But in the end, you have to jump off a cliff, and no one may catch you, and that's it. And no number of numbers or algorithms going to help you with that.
And I mean, clearly, the way you measure success is much more diverse now than just looking at the overnights. Do you think TV needs to redefine the way it thinks about success, and does it ditch shows too early?
I think, and again, I was talking to the network about this earlier, it's not just the journalists, the sort of slightly they beat them or what, all that nonsense is quite reductive. I think as an industry, no one likes failure, and we all know what it's like. It's the sort of overnight met by deafening silence, or my favourite version of it is the CV that everyone has with Strictly Come Dancing on, but nobody talks about an array of other shows that we've all quietly forgotten. They all got made. Someone worked really hard on them. They didn't get up in the morning thinking, I wonder if I can make something absolutely shocking and put it on the telly. So, but I think we've got to be brave enough to go back into those failures and go, well, why didn't that quite land? Because it's in that moment of analysing where it went wrong that I think you can begin to see how to get it right. But I think we are collectively very reluctant to talk about failure.
And the too wedded to the overnights, perhaps?
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, the American market, I'm sure you know, has changed fundamentally. And John Landgraf, who was here last year, just started saying, look, we're not talking about overnights anymore. I mean, I find it quite interesting the way data is now traded in that way. We're just not going to talk about it, so that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it will always exist. It's still useful in some ways, I suppose. There's just a sophistication to the way we need to talk about these things, which I think we're a bit slow at getting to now.
You haven't applied that mantra at Channel 4 yet.
Well, there's no point, is there? I mean, I cannot talk about them. I can sit there quietly and not talk about them. You'll still talk about them. Broadcasters will talk about them. So we have to live in that world. I think we just need to know we're applying slightly more sophisticated metrics.
On this point, I mean, I'm going to broaden this out a little bit and drop the P bomb, the privatisation bomb. John Whittingdale, our former Culture Secretary, in his apparent arguments for privatisation, has cited Channel 4's downward drift in market share, which fell for a fourth year in a row in 2015. That was his claim. Is that old school thinking, given what we're saying?
Well, it's just not true. I mean, we're the only terrestrial to put on share last year, so it's just not true. And I think, privatisation generally, I mean, honestly, sitting where I'm sitting, it is dispiriting to be sitting here 1 year later, still unable to close that particular conversation. And I think it's inevitable for everyone at Channel 4 and for all the people dealing with Channel 4, that uncertainty is destabilising.
Is it good news that John has gone? I mean, it felt from the outside that he was the one pushing the agenda.
I don't know, I'm not close enough to that. I mean, I think, we haven't had a sit-down. David hasn't had a proper sit-down yet with the new Secretary of State. Let's see where it gets to. But I think one way or another, we need some resolution on this.
How soon, do you think? At what point?
Well, as I say, I find it absolutely breathtaking that 1 year after I was asked this question on a smaller platform in a smaller room, I'm answering it again, and we're none the wiser. So, I'm still managing a team of people who are working closely with you guys, and I'm planning into 2018, and I don't know the future of my own organisation, and I think we need some resolution of that.
I mean, earlier this year, you said to broadcast in an interview, if you live through a period of uncertainty and you can't honestly answer suppliers, it does become problematic.
Yeah.
And is it problematic now? Are you not being able to communicate with...
a lot of, I can't see you well enough, but there'll be people out who are in, multi-year deals with us, who've got big returning series where they're trying to sustain their business, they want cash flow, we want to drive efficiencies by having long orders, and once it gets to the point where I'm not quite sure what the state of the organisation I'm commissioning for will look like, then of course that's going to get to the point where it's a tricky conversation. No, we are committing to them, but there is an element of doubt in all of this, and I just think for everyone's sake it needs resolving. Yeah, of course it needs resolving, yeah.
Yeah, and what about some of the other things that are reportedly on the table? I mean, we're sort of in an information-free vacuum at the moment. One of the most interesting of which is the idea of Channel 4 moving to Birmingham.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably have the good fortune, probably uniquely, although again I can see Simon Knight sitting here, of having worked in Birmingham.
You worked at the BBC, is
yeah, exactly. Right? So I think the thing about this is it's important that whatever happens in this space doesn't become totemic and a gesture. In the end, 53% of our first hour's commissions last year came from outside London. £150 million spent outside London. Massive leap in our nation's spend last year. So does it matter if I'm sitting in Birmingham, or does what really matter come down to how much money we are spending outside London and whether we are helping to grow and support strong indies in all parts of the UK. Now, I'm sure, I'm agnostic about whether Channel 4 should move in that sense. What I do think is the hiatus it would cause in what we do may not be hugely advisable. And actually for me, and I suspect for a lot of suppliers in the room, you'd rather have the money than me sitting down the road for a cup of tea. I may be wrong.
Charlotte Moore was pushed on this earlier, and doing a bit of research for today's session, it does feel that Notions and Regions Indies feel that they're still not getting a fair slice of the pie at Channel 4. You clearly disagree.
I would disagree, and I disagree largely because
but that
I think...
sentiment is there.
Well, I'm sure it is, but again, I can see Amir sitting in the front row. I doubt Avanti think that. I mean, I think there are lots of... one of the things I did when I got to 4, and very publicly, and you know this, is I went out and said, we are there for everybody. And I've told you this story. I went around the country, and someone rather sweetly said to me, will you be coming back? I mean, every year I lead a series of briefings around the country. We've got really strong nations suppliers. We've got good returning series coming out of Scotland now, really strong base in Wales. Finally, I can announce today, actually, we've got a new comedy from Lisa McGee coming out of Northern Ireland. It's been really hard for us to find a really good scripted series to come out of there. It's coming out of there. We've got Big Mountain in production with us. So, you know, to me, we are making those gains. And
are they getting the big series, though?
They are. You know, look at something like Posh Porn for Boomerang, which has been utterly game-changing for a Welsh company. So I think we're in a situation where we've got stretching targets, we're on course to meet them, and one of the things I'm proudest of is that has not been about picking up, you know this, picking up big productions and dumping them randomly in part of the UK. It's about trying to support Indigenous indies and really getting behind them to grow to be sustainable businesses.
Is that not what happened with Eden, which has come out of Keogh and Keogh Scotland?
No, I mean, honestly not. And I mean, in fact, weirdly, after this, I'm going up to that part of Scotland. I mean, there is a very substantial production team up there now. As I say, if that were our gesture, if my contribution to Nations Spend were to be using a regional indie to make a programme out of Scotland, I would understand the criticism. But as I say, that's just part of the story. I mean, I look at Firecrest, I look at Avanti, I look at Maverick in production for us. There are lots of other companies who are part of that NNR message, who are in long-term production and development with 4.
So Raised by Wolves is no more, and Caitlin Moran has bemoaned the fact that, you know, it had a strong working class regional voice. It's not just, you know, what goes on in the industry, it's what's happening on screen as well. Does that sit awkwardly with when you're cancelling a show that is quite different?
No, I mean, I'm a massive fan of Caitlin's, not least because she speaks as quickly as I do. We had a drink together a few years ago, and by 15 minutes in, we'd covered pretty much everything in the whole world ever, and I thought, well, nothing left to say to you now, we should go. But
literally that quickly.
Yeah, literally that quickly. It is a working class comedy, but as quite a lot of my self-declared working class comedy commissioners were quite indignant when she said that, we have an awful lot in that vein coming down the road and in production now. Well, you know, look at Chewing Gum, BAFTA and RTS award winning from a brand new writer. That's not an...
That's London, though.
I hate to break it to you, Jake. There are working class people in London as well who knew.
I'm talking about stuff with a regional voice.
Okay, Derry Girls, I just referred to one, Lisa McGee's next project, which is coming down the line. I mean, Man Down, with Roisin Connerty, a blap for us that's gone to series on E4 working class comedy. I mean, I think it's a slightly reductive argument. I mean, in the end, let's cut to the chase on this. We have spent millions of pounds on Raised by Wolves. It is quite well liked, quite critically acclaimed. It's in that bubble of shows in the middle that has had millions of pounds of Channel 4 money. We've decided to move on and do other things. I mean, I can also announce today we've got a brilliant new comedy from Desiree Akavan, who's an Iranian, New Yorkian lesbian, amazing new talent, straight onto E4. So every time we cancel a show, there are other people who are benefiting and getting a break and having their first thing on terrestrial channel in the UK. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. I'm quite happy to own those decisions, but, you know, sometimes things will get cancelled. That's the way it goes.
Would you be surprised if it popped up online?
It might do. I mean, I wish them very well. I'd say I really like her. It was a good show. We've decided to do something else. Good luck to her.
I asked that for a specific reason because...
You've got an evil plan.
I wanted to talk about something else that's stirred quite a bit of opinion, which is the fallout from Netflix swooping for Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Were you caught napping on that?
No, I promise you we weren't caught napping. Lead now. No. I mean, it's really simple, that, actually. I mean, we're now in partnership with Netflix on big dramas for E4, and I'm really pleased to be in partnership with them. They are quite literally, their investment has been transformatory on those shows. I've got digital dramas that feel like they could be on any large terrestrial channel because of that partnership. So I have no problem with Netflix, I have no problem with co-production with Netflix, I have no problem actually with the acceptance that other channels will come in with more money and come and pick off our shows. I mean, to a certain extent, Channel 4 is a DNA, is the R&D lab, rather. I got all my anagram there. And we are a greenhouse, and people will want those bits of IP, and they'll come and buy them. I mean, the fallout there was much more, and I quite happily talk about this, about partnership. And I think everything that I've talked about since I arrived at 4 has been us working in partnership to help grow new hits. And we want to work with people who respect the contribution that we're making there. So the way that was handled, and I think China Endemol would be open about that, wasn't ideal. That's all over, we've moved on, and as I say, we're at work with both China Endemol and Netflix.
So their suggestion was that you didn't take the opportunity to recommission the show, be it another series or more specials, after the White Christmas special in December 2014.
I'm very happy to go through the boring, excruciating detail.
I mean, we could go through the detail.
In the end, part of me thinks, Charlie gets a chance to go and make a massive series for America. We should let Charlie go and do that. I'm perfectly happy about that. Black Mirror was funded out of the comedy slate at a very expensive drama tariff, and there will come a point where if you want to make 10 Black Mirrors, there are comedy producers in this room who don't get their show on air. So I don't have a problem with that. The issue related to, rather boringly, to the second window. Everyone's asleep now, aren't they? I'm asleep.
Talk us through the second window. Go on. No, this is.
Are you serious? You want me to talk through the second window?
No, what this is a dispute with one of your major suppliers over a very high-profile show, and it's got Netflix involved, and everyone's intrigued by Netflix. And the suggestion is that
hold on to your hats, people. Are you ready?
On this, you failed to make an offer within the 30-day window. But
honestly, Jake, that's not true. That is just not what happened. And in the end, the nub of this comes down to, is it appropriate for a producer who has watched a broadcast? To bear in mind, let's just go back to the beginning of Black Mirror. In my first weeks at Channel 4, I, as a controller fresh from BBC One, whereas attitudes are slightly different, signed off the Prime Minister fucking a pig. That was the launch of Black Mirror. Now, in terms of a creative risk, that is right up there in my book. So would I expect then a producer to have a slightly different conversation with us at a point when we were in danger of losing a second window on a show that we had been absolutely fundamental in growing to scale and growing into a global phenomenon? Yes, I would. And I think that's perfectly legitimate. And actually, as I say, attractive though it might be to go over all the dirty laundry in public, that's sort of all there is usefully to say about it, I think.
Is it realistic to ask a production company to put profit over loyalty?
Yeah, I think the whole point about this
loyalty
is
over
about
profit, I should say.
It's about in the end it's about partnership. And one of the reasons I think, and there are lots of people in this room who I know come to Channel 4 first because they've got crazy ideas that they want to develop, they want our help developing them, and they have the ambition of growing them into huge global hits. You look at the success, you look at Hunted about to launch on CBS, extraordinary. A show, first time CBS has done a big factual entertainment show for years. And I've spoken to the new head of CBS, and he's saying, we're excited about this show. I've watched every episode of it. A show made in very tight collaboration between the same company and Channel 4. So, there are very, very good examples of partnership working, and they're the sorts of relationships that I want to encourage.
Have you been worried about it with other shows? I mean, I see you've moved quickly to commission another 2 series of Catastrophe. Obviously, Amazon has interest in that as well. Is that something you think about? Does it occupy your conversations at Channel 4?
No, the conversations about Catastrophe, Sharon's not here yet. The conversations about Catastrophe are really simple. Do Sharon and Rob want to write more series of Catastrophe? That's it. They're both incredibly loyal to Channel 4. I'm grateful to Amazon for the partnership.
do you worry that they might get a big offer from elsewhere?
Yeah, but in the end, Jake, this is the nature of being at Channel 4, and you've either got to embrace that and say, look, I work at a channel that takes massive risks, that has some, a lot of success, some failure. With those successes, ideally, you create something that's got sort of real cultural impact, and then it will have a market value. In an ever more diversified market where there are people who are quite simply richer than I am, they will come knocking. Well, okay, that might be a bit tedious, but then I've just got to come up with another big show. So, I think there's just a pragmatism that comes from being a smaller player.
And you see the likes of Netflix and Amazon as more of a partner than a poacher?
Yeah, because as I say, what is my experience of both Amazon and Netflix? I have had injections of cash into my drama slate, which have been absolutely transformational on the quality of content I can put on air for British audiences. And I think the big game changer here, and so much of our scripted now is co-produced, is the appetite globally for that Channel 4 taste palette is greater than it's ever been before, and that's really thrilling. There's a lot of scripted people in this room, I'm sure will know this. Years ago, it'll go, it's a bit British. It's a bit British, we probably can't sell that, we can't get any money. Well, you can now. So, fill your boots. Let's get all the money we can. That's lots of money going into British producers to make content for British audiences. Fantastic.
Okay, I think we've got another question from the wall. Dan Chambers, here we are.
Not many years ago, when shows like Come Dine With Me, Deal or No Deal, Coach Trip, and before then, oh blimey, Watercolour Challenge, Countdown, countless shows were delivering 2 million plus. And now, if we're honest about it, you look through the schedule, it's rare to find a daytime show that is delivering over 1 million. So is this because there's some major creative deficit in this room, or is it because our viewing habits have changed? And if it's the former, what can we do about it, and how can we help solve your problem?
It's just so tempting to say, yes, it's all your fault. There's a massive creative deficit in this room, so if you could just raise your game a bit, this wouldn't be a problem for me anymore. I mean, there are several things to say there, and you know, some of them are structural. One of the inevitable consequences of the proliferation of channels is, in daytime in particular, the offer is now quite rich. You know, if you want to watch peak time drama on another channel, you can watch that. So even the little channels at the bottom of the sort of digital spectrum, you're seeing are delivering quite sizable audiences for American acquired drama or for old repeats of BBC drama, whatever it might be. So the landscape's become more competitive, the expectations of the audience have become more competitive, and simply put, I have not invested in it. It has not been a massive priority for me in my time at Channel 4. And again, I've been really open about this. Most of our remit delivery is in peak. That is where we monetize what we do most effectively. Yes, I would like us to be doing better in daytime, and I've said that, you know, many times. But we've just launched Question Jury there, which I thought was a smart little show. We've had Gok's new show launched yesterday, doing quite well. We've got My Kitchen Rules, brilliantly made by Seven Wonder, coming into the schedule in the next few weeks. So the ambition is still there, but it's certainly not the single most important thing I worry about every day.
Will there come a point where daytime's just not commercially viable for Channel 4?
No, I don't think that moment will arise. It's still a very useful part of our schedule. And, you know, the fact that we are as strong as we are in terms of our overall share just shows you how hard we are working in peak. Because exactly to Dan's point, you know, there was a time at Channel 4 where daytime was carrying a lot of those peak slots. Not anymore, it's not. But if I had to say which way round would I want it, would I want the sort of shows he listed to be bolstering a weak peak time schedule, or would I want remit delivering peak time shows driving our income? I definitely want it the way it is.
And, I mean, usefully, Dan's asked that question in the week after you've just cancelled Deal or No Deal.
Yeah.
Talk us through that decision.
A really simple decision, actually, on one level. I mean, we are not a charity. Deal or No Deal has been a very successful show for many years, a very valuable piece of real estate for Endemol. I think Noel's magnificent in it, but as all things, there comes a point when it no longer washes its face. It's been losing money for quite a long time. It's been losing audience for quite a long time. And in the end, I mean, this is like all those things. It's when does the merry-go-round stop? And it happened to stop with me in the chair. And so I had to have a series of, you know, good conversations, honestly good conversations with Noel about what we were going to do. And, you know, we've ended the series. There will be this tour where he's taking the show around the country. That might give it a new lease of life. Let's wait and see. But you know, there just comes a point with those iconic brands where a channel's very grateful to them, but you do have to move on.
So you're not ruling out more Deal or No Deal?
Well, let's see. I mean, if it goes, I mean,
if that's getting 4 million viewers again,
honestly, one of the most interesting things about this whole process has been talking to him. I mean, as is often true with people who've been in telly as long as he has a brilliant producer's mind. He thinks that this will be game-changing for the show. He might be right. And if he is, great, we'll do more. And if he isn't, we won't.
And you've got other projects with him, haven't you?
Yeah, and you know, he's piloted something for us recently, and it is just a reminder that people who come from that almost vaudeville or old-style entertainment tradition have a range of skills that we're probably in slight danger of losing these days, and I think he's a talented broadcaster.
So another sort of challenging part of the schedule is children's. Ofcom, Pact and DCMS have told you that you need to do more for children, and today you've set out some plans in broadcast.
Yeah.
To up your budget from 3 to 5 million. What will that involve?
Well, we'll add 2 million to the 3
Spending more
million,
money.
And then we'll have 5. I mean, I think a lot's talked about this, and I mean, given that you've lived through the second window, can I tell you this is going to rock your world, this bit? But I think the interesting thing about this is just for people to understand what Channel 4's responsibility is in this area. So this comes from the Digital Economy Act, and the actual requirement is that we provide programmes that appeal to the interests of older children. And that was defined by Channel 4 as 10 to 14s, and a nominal amount of money, £1 million, was put against that in 2010 and 11. So in its first incarnation of how we served that audience, we spent money on games, actually, that were targeted at 10 to 14s. They won quite a lot of awards, but one of the things I was concerned about when I arrived is they might be award-winning, but we had no real evidence that anyone was playing them from the target demographic at any scale. So what's happened over the past 5 years is we've changed that spend into 8 o'clock on main channel, into pre-watershed programming, which has delivered things like Child Genius and Goggle Sprogs and Secret Life of 4-year-olds, all of which massively over-index for 10 to 14s. And over that time, we've seen our share of that audience steadily go up, just as BBC One's and ITV's has gone down. So we are already on the right track with this. An extra £2 million will help fund the ABC, which is our big multicultural set in a comprehensive school in the north of England drama this year. It will fund a big new Guy Martin series, working with young unemployed people, learning about engineering.
So the majority
it's just
of
supercharging it.
That money's spent, pretty much, is it?
No, that's some of it, and there'll be more coming along as well. I'm also looking, and I know there'll be people in the room who've had briefings on this, we're also looking at E4. You know, we've got a really good young audience, particularly 10 to 14s on Hollyoaks, which has seen a 20% uplift year on year from that demographic. How many more of them can we retain at 7:30 on E4? And I've seen them. There are people in this room who are working to that brief now on E4. So it's an important part of what we do, but let's just remind ourselves, Channel 4 don't monetize this audience. We can't monetize this audience. So I think it's a substantial uplift in where we started, and it's fueling a strategy that has already been shown to work.
Where you're headed, is that where Ofcom and the government want you to be? I mean, they're saying they want a much clearer articulation of how you're
I think
impacting
5
that
times our stated commitment to this target demographic, investing in a strategy that has palpably worked and we have the numbers to bear it out, and having the ambition, which is I think exactly where it should be, of delivering to this audience at the heart of the main channel, not marginalising it, not saying here's a kids block, but saying this is on the main channel in the heart of peak is really important. And, you know, I look around, you look at Goggle Sprogs or Child Genius, I don't think you see shows like that on other channels. And I think our stated commitment we are delivering on, these audiences are seeing themselves reflected back, and that's why we're seeing the growth.
So I wonder whether we could just touch on a couple of other genres as well. You've obviously sort of created this new department under Liam Humphreys, Factual Entertainment and Entertainment. How's that working?
Where's Liam? Just there. Yeah, I think it's working well. I mean, in the end, one of the strange things about 4 is that I think entertainment is one of the hardest things for us to do. And it's partly because, I've talked about this before, but our tone of voice pre-watershed is quite a difficult thing to get right in entertainment because there's a natural gravitational pull on 4 to the edgy and the risky, and that's much harder to get to work at 8. I think we've done some quite severe pruning in entertainment, but I look at The Last Leg, which has been grown from nothing into, I think, an unmissable show for us now. Cats Does Countdown, still a fantastic brand. Alan Carr, still fantastic talent for us. You know, Big Fat Quiz, still doing volume for us as well. So I think we need to make more progress in entertainment, but I've been quite tough on that team. I don't want, just in case anyone comes in with another one, please don't bring me any more hideous physical game shows. I can't bear it. They bring me out in hives. So, but that's what we get pitched the whole time. So I'm still looking for more of those intelligent, witty, thought-provoking, very Channel 4 in tone entertainment pieces, and they're in quite short supply. In terms of Fact Ent, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we're now the market leader in those factual formats. I think we have had more success in that space than any other terrestrial channel in recent years.
So just sticking to entertainment briefly, I mean, you've made a bit of a push in the market for a sort of a show that I think Ben Cordell described it as a show that's going to get you arrested.
Yep.
Is that something you're still looking for?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
something? Have you made any progress on that front?
Most days I feel like I'm probably going to be arrested for something that we're doing somewhere in the UK. I mean, yeah, definitely. And to say, the appetite for danger is there. I mean, it's quite interesting how self-selecting people are. I mean, people still bring in versions of X Factor. They still bring in versions of The Cube. And I do have a real appetite. I want us to be stronger in satire. I want us to be stronger in entertainment, which feels like it could only play on Channel 4. Now, that puts the bar very high, I know that. But that's why I've been quite severe about saying we're not just letting anything through now. I want to be sure that it feels right. And
you're going to persevere with The Jump?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, that feels, that could have got me arrested at various points last year. I thought it was going to get me arrested. But yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of that show. I think it's, it was hair-raising to live through it this year. I think we were unlucky on some counts, but I think it is a channel-defining entertainment show, and yeah, it's coming back.
And what about Naked Attraction? What
Naked
were you
Attraction.
thinking?
What's so weird? I mean, there are enough of my commissioners in the room. They will tell you that one of the things that is most irritating about me is my question every time is, why are we doing this? What's it about? You know, it's partly because I'm from a journalistic background, but we don't make stuff. You don't put a load of naked people on telly and go, well, that's going to rate, that's why I've done it. I mean, honestly, and I can be crushingly dull about this, so I'll say it very quickly, for me, this goes right back to a few years ago when we launched the campaign for Real Sex. It goes to the articles that have been all over the paper about students turning up at university, young male students who are impotent because their only exposure to the female body is in porn. So for me to be able to have a show on Channel 4 which completely redefines body image, which says to people this is what normal people look like, seems to me a really, really important demystifying for a generation that do swipe left and swipe right. And we might not like that, and it may not be our world, but that's the world they're living in. And I think if that's the world we're living in, we need to bring these shows to them, and they need to feel of their world. And that show is doing an extraordinary young share. And it's been a big hit, and big point and stare show, and the critics have hated it, but the audience it was designed for love it. And I think part of our role as a young broadcaster is to reach out to them.
So do you think you could see that show coming back in the
Yes.
future? It will come back? Is that a commitment?
Last night at 10:30, we had a nearly 20, or Monday night, 20 share of young audiences watching a young gay guy choose a gay partner from an array of naked men. Now, constantly people say to me, where's Channel 4's sense of danger? Well, that's quite out there, I think. So, and for us to be able to be saying, this is what it's like to be gay in Britain today, brilliant, great, good, exactly what we should be doing, tick.
And can you reassure people that there's still stability? I mean, you've lost some key commissioners. You've lost David Glover, Piers Wenger, all in the last few months or so. Those are
honestly, and I know my team will bear me out on this, we've been on this extraordinary journey from can we fix it, maybe we can't fix it, I think we're fixing it, it's sort of fixed, it might even be fixed now. That's roughly 5 years, year by year. And we've all held hands together, and we've done that together, and it's been an incredibly close-knit team. And I think what happens when you get to where you wanted to get to is people, I can almost feel it, they sigh and they go again. And they'll be looking for other challenges. But let's put it another way. I've loved working with Piers, but what greater compliment can we have to how far Channel 4 drama's come that the BBC have nicked him? I mean, that's pretty good, isn't it, for a channel that's not even defined by its drama?
Is that the conversation you have with him?
No, look, Piers and I are friends, and I rate him incredibly highly, and I really wish him all the best of luck at the BBC. But, people will go. I'm sure they will go. That's what happens in my experience. You live through an experience like this has been unbelievably testing, but we've done it, and then people will want to go and face other challenges, and that's great. Weirdly, I feel very similarly about Desiree Akhavan. When I saw her, I thought she just jumps out of the telly and she's got a voice that you want to hear. I mean, I think Michaela is an extraordinary talent. I mean, she's got such a brilliantly expressive face. And I think for us to have backed someone like her from doing a blap to delivering a series which has been multi-award winning, I mean, one of the real thrills of this past year, and I know Phil and Neris will bear me out on this, is seeing her at award ceremonies just sort of not quite being able to believe that she's gone from being on stage at the National Theatre to being fated as a TV star in her first series. So she's shooting the second series now. I'm absolutely delighted to have it on the channel.
I was speaking to Asher Taller last week, and he was saying he can't think of a tougher time for comedy producers.
Really? Why?
His view is, I don't wish to put words into his mouth, but the drama's getting all the love, and comedy's been left out in the cold a little bit.
Yeah.
You disagree with that, clearly.
Well, no, I mean, it's this hideous phrase, isn't it, about comedy being a market failure genre. I mean, the simple fact of it is, you can have critically acclaimed shows, and we've had them on Channel 4, which cost me £1 a viewer. I mean, that's the honest fact of it. So these are not going to be big, revenue drivers. I think that's, again, why Channel 4 matters. It's why the way we were set up matters, is that you need to be a channel that is consistently commissioning whatever Phil's got, 5 or 7 series, isn't it, Phil? 7 every year on Channel 4, 3 or 4 more on E4, and that commitment's there year-round, whatever happens, as opposed to, and I think maybe what Ash is referring to, is it goes in and out of fashion, doesn't it? You see it in the American market too. A comedy works, everyone piles in. The comedy doesn't work, everyone runs away. And I think it's slightly similar here. But, Channel 4's commitment has been there from the beginning and will continue.
Okay. We have our final question from the wall.
Creative breakfasts are 2 words that set the indie community all of a quiver. What's the story?
I mean, I've been really open about this. It's not anything I'm, trying to hide. I mean, we work differently at Channel 4 now, and I think it's part of the reason we've been successful. So the Creative Breakfast, I convene one with my heads of department every Tuesday morning. It's the only meeting that they can't miss unless they've been arrested or are having a baby or whatever. And we talk about ideas that have come in that we think might have the scope to become a hit for Channel 4. And I think That is then replicated beneath me. So the commissioners, again, meet in cross-genre teams every Tuesday. They discuss the same material, and we collate it all, and I have a bit of a look. And it's been a very, very helpful way of getting more feedback on ideas, of thinking in different sorts of ways. It's been so successful now, it's been rolled out to our presentation team. So I have people involved in Channel 4 presentation in those meetings. We have people from marketing in the meetings. We have people from audience research in the meetings. I hope in time we will have people from reception in the meetings. Because I think, honestly, and I've not just made this all up, this is from a huge amount of work around creativity and the best creative thinking coming through the collision of different ideas. So if I can configure groups of people who think differently, who are ideally over time made up differently, because we get better in terms of the diversity of our commissioning team, I think we have more likelihood of getting stuff through. And actually, I mean, I can see Phil sitting over there now. It's been very, very helpful in comedy, because comedy is so subjective in terms of taste, isn't it? So me going, well, I don't find that funny, that shouldn't be the basis on which we don't make something. So having 80, 90 people thinking about it, not like a focus group, because they're TV people, so they're bringing more to the table than just yes, no, maybe. They're thinking, but what if, has been very, very helpful. So it's a means of us, I think, getting better shows on air faster and working in partnership with indies, and it's a free resource. You know, we're there to help.
Is it not commissioning by committee, though?
No, I mean, it's rather ironic, this, given everyone always accused me of being a bossy boots, that I can't both be a bossy boots and be commissioning by committee. No, what it means is I've got 80 people who understand telly thinking in interesting ways about how you might get something over the line. I mean, sometimes there's a very interesting example recently where a comedy black went round and 3 or 4 gay guys in various groups went, I'm really unhappy about the representation of that character. Well, I'm not a gay man and I wouldn't have necessarily spotted that. So that sort of feedback can be very helpful. It might be that, it might be not that, but this, that the direction of travel is not quite right on that, but this is an interesting place we could take it. I wonder if that would work. Now, it's fed back to the indies. You can chuck it in the bin if you want. You don't have to action it. It's just an attempt to get quicker to market with ideas that are better thought through.
Just finally on this before we have our final clip. If an idea doesn't make it to the breakfast, is it doomed?
No, and actually, I'm glad to have a chance to answer this. People think good ideas get to the breakfast and bad ideas don't. To be absolutely clear, a lot of very bad ideas get to the breakfast. That's the whole point. So it could be something with, like, what's a classic example? We spent lots of time talking about a general theme. How do we respond to Brexit? What does that tell us about the Britain that we live in today? How do we make sure that Channel 4's strong Liberal vote about giving, voice to disenfranchised communities is really foregrounded now, because it needs to be? But how do we also talk to the 18 million people who made a different decision about what the future should look like? So that went to the breakfast. And what comes back from that is some quite interesting insights about direction of travel. What could we do in documentary? Is there a way in scripted in that space? So it might be as broad as that. The rest of the time, lots of good shows will come in and will be commissioned in an entirely normal way. They'll never get to the breakfast. That's fine too. So it's a way of dealing with things that I suppose are slightly thornier issues.
Do you think producers want to go to the breakfast? Is that?
Well, some people want to go. I mean, to be honest, I would happily have producers in the breakfast. And genuinely, I think I've said this, like, if someone can find a way through this for me, then please do. The problem is, I love Jim Allen, but he's not going to want to sit there with people from, I don't know, any number of other companies nicking his ideas, looking grumpy. So that's no good. So I have yet to find a way in which we can deal with the competitive challenge of having people who are fighting for the same Channel 4 pound in a room. But as I say, very receptive to hearing from it if people have got ways we could do it. It's the sort of thing that keeps you awake at night, though. I'm not sure any other channel would have done a drama quite like this. It looks at an Asian comedian who's had a knock on the door and faces allegations of sex abuse, and yet as the summer's gone on, it's felt more and more achingly topical. And I think it's important to me that Channel 4 still does those sorts of dramas that I think other people might shy away from.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that with us, with you. Time for some questions from the app. First one, if you had your time again, what would you do differently?
Well, my whole life, or just the Channel 4 bit of it?
I think
we could be here sometime.
I think I'm going to clarify here. We'll stick to Channel 4.
Oh, there are all sorts of answers. There are all sorts of answers to that. I mean,
feels like a legacy question, doesn't it?
I think the really weird thing about having been at 5 and 1 and 4 is that the audience should be the audience, shouldn't it? Logically, they should watch the same things wherever you put them on, and they just don't. And I think what's interesting about having done those 3 jobs is there's a humility that comes from it, of realising that what an audience's expectations are of different channels are fundamentally different. And I think, it took me some time to get my head around that on 4. So I'm not sure you can short-circuit that process. I have a feeling you have to live through it, unfortunately. I'm sure there are loads of individual decisions I would have taken differently, but not a huge amount.
Do you think the perception of Channel 4 commissioning has changed in the wider industry?
Bloody hope so. We've put a huge amount of work into trying to get this right, and my team will tell you, quite schoolmarmish about it. We need to be quick getting back to people. We need to be courteous. We need to be constructive. We're there to help. And, you know, I'm sure there are still interactions that people in this room have that are not all they want them to be. I mean, one of the things I have said, and I think I said earlier, is important to me, is this is about the quality of your conversation. And if you find someone you get on well with and you're having a great conversation with them, I've become much more agnostic about which genre you talk to. I don't really mind. Just find the people that you gel with and that you can get your best work with, and then talk to them. So, you know, I'm sure there'll still be feedback that we could be better in certain areas, but we are really, really trying.
Okay. There's loads of questions here.
Are they really hard
We won't
ones?
do all of them.
Are we doing quick
There's
fire
some
round?
easy ones, there's some hard,
there?
there's some more
Okay.
hard ones. I'll ask an easy one. Is there a format or idea that Steve Jones can't front? The can't's written in capitals here.
Is that a question that says the man is so staggeringly talented that he could front anything, or is that what the question is? Is the person here?
It seems a bit cynical, this question, to me, if you ask me.
I mean, do you know what? I think he's a remarkable presenter. I think he's done an incredible job for us on F1, and it just reminds me that there is a generation, actually, of children's presenters, of people who were brought up on TV, who are extraordinarily capable, particularly live, and I do worry, genuinely, partly because it's my background, that that's a dying skill. So he's very talented. I don't understand if it's a mean question or a nice question, sorry.
And this one feels very appropriate. How do you think Brazil and the IOC scaling back plans for the Paralympics in Rio will affect Channel 4?
Do you know what I actually think, and I hope this happens, and I hope you will play your own small part in it, is the notion that we, in 2016, are at a stage globally where we treat disabled people differently, and that the headway that we made after 2012, which I think was a normalising of what it was like to be disabled in Britain on a scale that we have never seen before, the idea we're going backwards with this stuff is so wrong that what I really hope happens, we will throw everything we have at this coverage. We've got an exceptional lineup of new disabled presenters, the entire presenting team during the day are disabled. We've got new disabled production trainees. We've got hundreds of people on the ground. We've got the last leg live every night with celebrity guests. We are throwing everything at it. And nothing would give me greater pleasure than seeing that it is embraced by the British public and that we see really good audiences for it, because I think that will be the vote of confidence that we need to say this way of treating disabled people differently isn't acceptable, and that we are a country that has different values, and that's the narrative that Channel 4 wants to be part of.
Do you think it sort of what's happening in Brazil? Applause. Do you think what's happening in Brazil undermines the work you're doing?
You know, I mean, I wouldn't be grand enough to say that. We're a channel in Britain and they're trying to stage the Paralympics. I think it is depressing that there seems to be an acceptance that a substandard service will be acceptable. I think that's depressing, and I know Philip Craven has lobbied very hard to get that addressed. But all I know is from a Channel 4 point of view, you have 800 people who are focused on very little else than getting this over the line in the next few weeks. It will be challenging, I'm under no illusions about that, but I'm absolutely confident we will do something even more remarkable than 2012.
One thing that I always think is Claire Balding not going to be exhausted?
Do you know what? Do you know what? Genuinely, I asked that question with a production hat on. I mean, she is absolutely extraordinary. And again, with a live TV background, she is one of the most extraordinary live presenters I have ever seen. But no, she's raring to go.
Thank you very much, Jay. Appreciate your time today. Thanks also to our sponsor, who's Broadcast Magazine. That's it from us. Please show your appreciation for Jay Hunt.
Thank you.